4, an evening of live music, arts, education, and trade. Potluck social with liberty-minded people from New England and beyond. April 5th at St. Joseph's Church Hall in Cumberland, Rhode Island. Details on the web at libertylovefest.org. That's libertylovefest.org.
My name is Tony Jones, and you are tuned in to The Coalition, where we discuss all sides of local, regional, and national news, politics, and current events. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you all listening over the air, over the internet, and throughout the country, and everybody in studio to join me in a moment of silence, commemorating those lost 11 years ago at the Station nightclub. With me in studio is the P.O. taxpayer. P.O., good evening.
Good evening, Tony.
Christina's here. Chris, good evening.
Good evening, Tony.
Huge program on tap this evening. We're really going to cover all the bases this evening, P.O.
Right. You know, the Libertarian Party is a big tent. You know, for years, the GOP, the Democrats have spoken to the mass and said, come and join us. We will pander to you, and after the primary, we will ignore you. The Libertarian Party embraces a variety of movements of good-spirited people who mean well for the cause of liberty, who mean well for the country, and also mean very well for individual rights. And that's what we're going to reflect on tonight, Tony. By the way, speaking of the Station nightclub fire, last night we had the chance to spend time at Manchester 65.
P.O. and I hitting the town like a dynamite.
We were cruising, baby.
A 1-2 punch.
The wonderful, wonderful all-day event, all-day rock and roll at the home of our new sponsor, Manchester 65, deep in the heart of West Warwick, Rhode Island. Tony, what do you say about this new club?
It's, well, I guess I'm not the best person to wax on it because there's very few bar rooms that I don't like, but I'm loving me some Manchester 65. I got to say, it's great to, and I don't want to sound like a Rhode Islander, but it's great to see these national acts and not have to quote unquote drive into the city.
Right. It's an multiple ages format. You know, what's great too is to be able to go to a club where it's good old rock and roll in a cool mill setting, have a couple of beers. It's a locally owned business. You know, they've embraced us as a radio station, and they've embraced the liberty movement. It's just great stuff. And we're going to be, at the end of every show, we're going to be announcing the lineup for the week. So I hope you'll take a moment and join us down at Manchester 65.
And talk about a business owner who put in some sweat equity into pretty much taking what was an old, dying business and turning it into a nightclub. It reminds me of New York City, Soho, where you go into the meatpacking district and you knock on some door somewhere, or even in Oneyville. I played a show once, and the name of the place was Door 3. And so we went down Dyke Street. We went down a back road. There was a door with a number 3 on it. We knocked 3 times, and there was a clandestine nightclub in there. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's what rock and roll is all about. So again, take a moment, go up to our website. We'll have links up there to Manchester 65, coalitionradio.us. Tony, Gina Raimondi, the gift that keeps on giving. Cooking with Gina. Now, that's not cooking with gas. That's cooking with Gina.
Moments before we went to air, it was like manna from heaven.
The radio gods said that the pot roast panderer, our own general treasurer, Gina Raimondo, has not done enough to pander, to appear, to try and place some type of, I don't know, human image upon herself. She continually panders to women across Rhode Island, trying to make them feel warm and cozy. And fat guys.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the demographic she's identified as an untapped market. Guys who aren't getting enough pot roast at home.
She's going to leave a trail of pot roast to the polling place. Ooh, piece of pot roast.
Gingerbread cookies. Wasn't there a cookie baking thing going on for a while?
My first reaction when I looked at it is Gina was with some Mike Myers looking like, who was verklempt. What was that lady on Saturday Night Live? And Gina looking very, very comfortable behind the range. Yes, very comfortable.
No.
Very comfortable behind the range, looking like, for all, a deer in the headlights. Again, we've got serious issues in this state, Tony. We've got real problems. We've got a sellout now on the compromise that was she touted as the only way to save the pension system here in Rhode Island, to provide, of course, what the true purpose of Rhode Island government is, to provide quote-unquote retirement security for its state employees. Because that's why we're all here, Christina, to make sure that the state employees of the state of Rhode Island have retirement security. I'd forgotten that, but I'm glad she's here to remind me. Now, all of that went right out the window, and in an attempt to just, what we call here, Operation Change the Subject, just never mind, nothing to look, please move right along.
Hey, when I was a Boy Scout, we did a thing every year. It was called a beanhole bake. You took hot dogs and beans and you put them in a hole and you cooked them up. It was like what Gina Raimondo could do is a pothole bake. So she could go to all the potholes on 95 and cook different dishes.
And the streets of Providence. I think that's wonderful.
Wow.
There's actually a meme now of people photoshopping pictures of potholes with stuff like that going on in them. So maybe that's something that Gina Raimondo can do for a revival campaign.
Gina, if you're out there and listening, please.
We'd love to have you on the program.
We'd love to have you on the program. We will still take your advertising dollars, by the way. But please, can you get a grip?
Yeah, we're much nicer in person than we are in absentia.
Well, two of us are. And then again, what would be another week on the Coalition on Talk Radio without some discussion of the fine work of the Rhode Island Economic Development Commission?
This has been a great week for you. It's like Christmas for
spectacular. Okay, so last week we were touted, flashback, $300,000 was given to a company that's in the process of inventing a way to mount the solar panels that no one are buying onto the homes that people are being foreclosed on. Did I sum that up accurately? So $300,000, and it's the laughing stock of the business community, because the killer is not just the 0% interest, because dealing with EDC is like dealing with a car dealer, but it's the notion that the payback schedule is when they've had positive cash flow for 6 months in a row. Now, somehow...
Imagine if they did that for you here, P.O.
Right. Actually, you should put it in an application.
Right. You mean, actually something unknown in Rhode Island, radio that's relevant. But, I was joking with a business owner last night who found it riotously funny because, the we envisioned was in the 5.5 month... Governor, we were almost there. 5 months of positive cash flow, and look, oh my, no money. But we're going to start again. On and on. Well, now, okay, so now...
Yeah, and also, who decides what their appropriate cash flow obligations are?
Generally accepted accounting principles from the state of Rhode Island.
What's to stop me as the CEO from deciding I need a quadruple raise?
Nothing.
Company car.
It's like, I need to make $500,000 a year.
Right, or just spend some money down at Twin River.
Right.
So now we're treated to the fact that $2 million was given to Beta Spring, who is one of the cause celebs du jour. They're one of these nifty, spiffy, business incubators that are going to save us, like the last one and the one before that and the one before that. Well, they took this $2 million. It was federally money, and this is where it gets serious. This is actually where people get a little peeved. $2 million gone, invested in 3 companies that were out of state. One that was Israeli. Okay.
No, it's been invested in far more than 3 companies, but there are 3 that were highlighted.
Right. And they also use it for operational expenses. Yeah. So the city of Providence, which is getting over paying back or maybe not paying back the fines to the federal government for housing money that they screwed the pooch with and job training money that they screwed the pooch with, now the state is going to be treated to multiple fines, multiple penalties because... Again, here we go. An EDC that's hopelessly out of control, that's trying to pick winners and losers. It is generally incapable of really accomplishing anything on a fundamental business level. And yet, and by the way, Richard Leach signed off on this, your future judge, because, after a lifetime of dedication and service to the state of Rhode Island, he clearly has only made a few $1 million. All right. So signed off on, and comparisons to 38 Special? No.
Hey, maybe I could get one of those coveted state jobs. They could send me around to collect on the loans.
Or not collect on the loans, as we would say with the guy who's running for mayor, Mr. Solomon, who owes tens of thousands of dollars to the state. So, sleep tight, Rhode Island.
I'll be interested to see how the Beta Spring thing shakes out.
Or doesn't.
Yeah, because there's some dispute as to whether the bean counters they hired to take a look at this are accounting for things quite correctly. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on with this.
Or, as we like to say here, ruh-roh.
Yeah, ruh-roh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we are pleased tonight as we've got two sets of guests on tonight. Actually, we've got someone joining the cast here at the Coalition on Talk Radio. We always talk about our supporting bench. We've got a lot of folks who come and go and bring a lot to the show. You don't get this on conventional AM radio. We are the Coalition because we've got people with different backgrounds, different talents, who bring a lot of different things to
You mean this isn't Republican radio?
No. Not at all.
You mean there's no talking points on this program?
Not at all.
Oh, I forgot to send you your talking points this morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we want to introduce Jared Moffat.
The one week I come in not hungover, and I didn't get any talking points.
Jared, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. It's great to be here.
Jared is a recent graduate of Brown University. He has also set up something called Regulate Rhode Island, a coalition of citizens working to end marijuana prohibition, a project near and dear to the heart of all
It's close to
libertarians.
home.
Yes, it's very, very close to home. Jared, tell us, you've got a rich history of being involved with this in the state. You've been involved with this for going on 5 years now. Give us a little description of your background and what you're working on.
Sure. Yeah. I just graduated from Brown, so I moved to Providence 5 years ago to come to school here, and now I've graduated. I'm living here. I was, from the beginning, a big advocate for the medical marijuana program. So I worked with RIPAC, the medical folks, the patient community there, and then in 2012 we organized a bunch of students around the state to support the marijuana decriminalization law that passed, and that removed criminal penalties for marijuana for possession of less than an ounce. And so now we're taking it to the next level, and we're really going for the grand prize here, taxing and regulating marijuana and eliminating prohibition. So yeah, we're really excited about the coalition and moving forward with our bill.
Why is marijuana, I'll call it regulation/deregulation decriminalization, why is that so important to the average Rhode Islander?
Well, I think it's important because we've had this failed drug war that has impacted so many communities and wasted so much of our tax dollars. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to, first of all, limit adults, freedom to use marijuana in their own home. I don't personally think that the government has any business telling us not to do that. But secondly, when it comes to using taxpayer dollars to encourage law enforcement to go after people who are using marijuana, I think that's just a really irresponsible use of state funds. And it's not doing anything productive for society. So this is just a really backwards policy, failed policy, and we need to reform it.
A few months ago, we were fortunate to have Robert Mann, Rhode Island, as it was described to me recently, Rhode Island's own William Kunstler, the patron saint of lost causes, of the individual rights, of individual freedom here, the attorney who really has made it his life to fight the status quo in the judicial system. He talked a lot about the thousands of Rhode Islanders who are incarcerated for really meaningless social crimes and its cost to both the state, the community, and really the fabric of the community. Would you describe the war on drugs as an absolute failure?
Totally. Completely an absolute failure. It hasn't done anything productive or good for society.
There's an organization, there's actually several sort of one-man organizations across the state that will, roll out their best diatribes, their best...
What about the children?
Yep.
Their best reefer madness techniques. Take some time to debunk some of the myths, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, something we've seen a lot lately on the opinion pages of the Providence Journal is talk about the gateway theory. And I like that the Time magazine had a story called The Gateway Theory, the myth that will never die. And it does seem like it continues to be resurrected, even though it's been debunked time and time again by every credible study that's looked at it, including a 1999 study that was commissioned by Congress studies that said that there's nothing to the idea. Basically, the fallacy that people are making is they look at the population of people who use heroin and cocaine and harder drugs, and they say, oh, well, a lot of them started off using marijuana. Okay, well, if we look at people who are driving motorcycles or riding motorcycles, a lot of them probably had tricycles when they were children. Does that mean tricycles are a gateway to motorcycles? No, it doesn't, because
actually, maybe it does, but it's kind of a meaningless point.
Right.
I would say, Coca-Cola is a gateway to heroin as well.
Exactly.
So almost everybody has tried a Coca-Cola at one point.
Right, and that's why it's a logical fallacy. What you would really need to do is look at the total number of people that have used marijuana and ask how many of them go on to use harder drugs, and it's actually a very small fraction. So almost half of Americans, about 40% or so, have used marijuana at some point in their life, and when it comes to the second most illegal drug is around 10 to 15%. So the vast majority of people who use marijuana don't go on to use harder drugs, and that right there should put the whole gateway myth to rest. But yet it keeps coming up again.
Well, it strikes me that America would be a safer place with a well-regulated, governed and taxed marijuana industry. It strikes me, having grown up in the 70s and the 80s, this week we're reading about the onset of synthetic marijuana, where, there's no safety in the supply. There's an inordinate amount of violent crimes associated with drug use. It just seems the cost to society of an illegal drug business is far higher than the cost to society of an occasionally overused drug.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, the cartels from Latin America are making billions of dollars every year off selling marijuana to Americans. And I think that's, causing a lot of violence, causing a lot of, harmful social consequences. I mean, so you don't even have to come at it from the perspective of, I like marijuana, I should have the right to use it. I think when you look at it on sort of an objective society perspective, we're seeing all this money going towards illegal cartels and illegal criminals who control the drug. And a lot of people are asking, why in the world wouldn't we just tax and regulate it? And we take that money, we take the tax dollars and put it back into good social programs, and we can regulate where it's sold so that we have control over when it's sold, how it's sold, and to whom it's sold.
And the quality control of the product itself.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole thing with synthetic marijuana, I mean, the reason synthetic marijuana is around is because we've prohibited, real marijuana, and people have tried to come up with ways to get around that prohibition. So if we had never done that in the first place, we wouldn't have that. And yeah, marijuana gets sprayed with chemicals and pesticides because people are trying to, make it grow a certain way, and people don't know what they're getting. People don't know when they're buying it on the street. There are no safety standards or quality controls. So,
is it safe to say that people are going to smoke pot anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I think that any study that's looked at, hey, if we have harsher penalties for marijuana use, does that make use go down? It doesn't. We can look at the Netherlands. We can look at states that have decriminalized marijuana, states that have medical marijuana, and the fact is we don't see any real difference in use among those different places that have different punishments for marijuana. So I think that if we were to legalize, is there a chance that at the beginning there's going to be a slight uptick in use? Probably so. It'll be a novelty. People will be interested. But in the long term, we know that using the drug war, using this criminal justice system doesn't actually deter people from using it. It's still widely available.
Yeah, all it really does is punish people in a certain segment of society.
Yeah, totally. The ACLU came out with a report last year that showed, nationally that people of color are about 4 times more likely to be arrested for a marijuana offense. In Rhode Island, it's about 2.5 times.
Right, whereas they're roughly equal percentage-wise as far as
in their
usage.
rates of use. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Well, as we like to joke, the most dangerous thing about marijuana continues to be getting caught with marijuana.
Right.
Totally. And it doesn't make sense. I mean, people are like, oh, well, people, they don't really go to prison for this. And first of all, that's not really true. A lot of people do end up in prison or in the criminal justice system. But it's also, you get labeled as a criminal, which, once you have that criminal record, it can prevent you from getting a job. It can cut off access to a lot of different social services. It basically, you become a second-class citizen. So right. I think we have to consider that as well.
Well, among other things, it can cut off your access to student loans.
Yeah, totally.
Which obviously disproportionately affects people who are who need student loans.
Right. If you're wealthy and your parents are just paying for all of your college and you don't have to take out loans, well, then that doesn't affect you. But if you're depending on those loans to get through college, and it just doesn't make sense. Why would you take someone's education away and put them on a much more negative path?
Right. And again, if your family is wealthy, they can probably hire you a much better lawyer than you would get picking from the public defender's list.
Right.
Public defenders work hard and they're good at what they do, but they're overworked.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Where does the legislation stand right now, and who are its sponsors?
So the legislation was introduced last week. Our two primary sponsors in the House, we have Chairwoman Edith Agello, and then in the Senate, we have Senator Josh Miller. And Representative Agello's bill has 29 co-sponsors in total, which is fantastic, including Minority House Leader Brian Newberry. So we have some bipartisan support there. And in the Senate version, we have about 13 co-sponsors right now. I haven't seen the final list. I should see that this week, but we're very encouraged by the large number of legislators that are signing on.
Are you optimistic?
I think I'm very optimistic. Yeah, I don't. Nothing's a guarantee at this point, of course, but I think that we do have a realistic chance. I think I would even say maybe a 50-50 chance of getting it done this year.
All right, great. Now, you're going to report in with us routinely on this, right?
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.
We'd like to have you on every few weeks, and we also look forward to just posting any updates you have on the coalitionradio.us website. This, like I said, this is an issue that's near and dear to our hearts, and for everyone, I'm always one of those people who complains when when the legislature lapses into social issues as opposed to focusing on the economic. This one's pretty simple. To me, it's a lot like marriage equality. Hey.
Well, and it's also economic as well, though. If we're not wasting police resources and we're getting something that we can regulate and tax the same way we do alcohol, it's all upside from what I can see.
I hate when we agree.
I'm so sorry.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, there was just the governor of Colorado just revised their estimates for how much tax revenue Colorado is going to bring in this year, and it's looking close to $200 million in tax revenue.
Right.
So there's the fact that if we're the first state on the East Coast to do this, then we're going to have the entrepreneurs and the businesses starting those businesses here in Rhode Island. And when Massachusetts and Connecticut down the road legalize, it's going to be our businesses and our entrepreneurs expanding into those states rather than the reverse. So I think there's a huge economic component to this.
It would be nice for us to be first in something in Rhode Island or in New England, as opposed to last. I believe we were last in New England in marriage equality.
Right. It would be nice to be first in something positive as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jared, again, thanks for coming on. We look forward to your reports from the field. Know that you've got a home here, and we'd also like an extended invitation to the legislators who are involved with this. We'd like to help them in any way we can support your efforts.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Well, Tony, what do you think? What do you think the chances are this year?
I think it's a good year because I think that people rerunning, unfortunately, are going to be able to take that back to their districts because there is such an overwhelming support. When they go door to door, state senators, state legislators, when they go door to door, they're going to be able to take it back to their districts and say, I supported this bill, it passed, or I support this bill in general. So, that's going to be a feather in the cap for areas where people support it.
Well, and it's time to hold your legislators individually accountable for how they vote on bills. Ultimately, it's if we just sit and complain and moan and groan about this stinks, that stinks, this isn't working, and you can't point to specific acts of treason, if you will, whether it be everything from 38 specials to, expanding casino gambling. For example, in my legislator, the Lady Macbeth from Cumberland was a loser on both counts, and she gives me a lot of friction. She even gave me a little sass when I
how dare you?
Now she ignores my phone calls again. Shocking. But when she completely is out to lunch on these specific issues, then it's just not us ranting and raving. Then we're talking policy, Tony. And right now, at this point, regardless of what the issue is, it's got to be a policy. It's got to be on point. You have to get in these people's grills.
It's hopefully, depending on how much support your legislator has in their district, when the summer comes, you're going to run into them. They're going to be at Stop and Shop. They're going to be knocking on your door. They're going to be at the local town social.
Wait. You say that. I've got that 100-yard
Oh, yeah, that's true. For legal reasons, P.O. won't see his legislator. But in general,
she'll hear a voice sort of in the distance. That whole stalking
don't
thing.
tase me, bro.
It wasn't true. Well, we've only got a couple minutes before the break, but I want to get right in and introduce our next guests. We are very fortunate tonight. Two folks who are very committed to their issues. We're going to talk about Oath Keepers. It strikes me that, and just by curious coincidence of my life, I have been very close to a number of, I'll call it, national events with international consequences.
You're like Forrest Gump.
Exactly. All right. I used to work in the World Trade Center. I was 30, 40 blocks away the first time it blew. I was outsized and outsourced by the company that had hired me initially. I used to work there part-time up until about a year and a half before the first World Trade Center explosion. Now I work in Watertown. Yikes. and we're coming up in just a few short weeks on the one-year anniversary of the Boston bombings. So a lot of debate in the liberty movement about the role of law enforcement.
If they ask you to transfer the Ukraine, I think you should deny.
There's a lot of debate and a lot of consternation about the role of law enforcement, the military, first responders in the liberty movement. On one hand, many of them are our friends, and on the other hand, we see this gradual encroachment by government into our lives, and we see, unfortunately, folks in the military, first responders, police, being asked to be the advance of that very day-to-day encroachment into our personal lives. So this is an issue that I wanted to address for quite a while. We are fortunate tonight to have Randy, and everyone identifies themselves. Okay is your middle name? Is that it? Randy OK Swanson and John Franceschi, who are both with the movement. We're a little short on mics here, which we'll square up after the break. But welcome. Randy, in just a couple minutes, and I'm going to ask John the same question right after the break. Give us a little bit of your background in terms of, what involvement you've had with either military, first responders, and then what was that liberty moment? Because what I'm finding, and this is a question I started asking, all of us at one point or another in the liberty movement have had that one moment in our life where that sort of, that hallelujah moment, where all of a sudden a lot of things became clear. Tell us about yourself and how you came to be involved.
Well, first off, I want to thank you for having us aboard and giving us this opportunity to share some really good news with the American listeners. Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of active, retired, and retired military police officers and first responders whose mission it is to help with the help of like-minded citizens to simply honor the oath that they took to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. That seems to be the cusp of any kind of problems that may come up, and the solution just to have the integrity to honor your oath. That wake-up point for me was standing on hallowed ground, April 19th, 2009, when Oath Keepers was formed. I found myself surrounded by a lot of courageous men and women that really mean what they say when they take the oath to defend the Constitution. The Founding Fathers, some people say we're lucky to live in America and have these freedoms. Well, I'd look at it another way. It was really smart, very good move that the Founding Fathers had to design these tools of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. And besides being really smart, it took a lot of courage to defend those documents and support them. And that's an ongoing mission. So any problems that come up in the news, you can boil most of them down to not obeying their Constitution or not obeying the Bill of Rights, and we need courageous people to stand tall.
After the break, I want to get into this some more, but there's a really, to me, a compelling moment when I really kind of clicked on in terms of your movement and my understanding of it. There's a tendency for folks to look at the short run in history and see people who are kind of sounding the alarm as exaggerating the situation. Well, having lived through and been at kind of on the sidelines of history, I see this speeding up. And all of a sudden I'm reading about the history of World War II. And the famous line from the Nuremberg trials was, I was just following orders. And so it would strike me that the entire point of our Constitution and the Uniform Code of Justice and the way that our entire military and first responders are established on is the notion of avoiding that moment that I was just following orders. Fair enough?
Oh, that's the bottom line right there. There are 10 specific unlawful, constitutional orders that an Oath Keeper will never carry out. They're listed on the website if you go to oathkeepers.org. This is important for the citizens to keep their eyes open, too, in case you see your grandmother getting knocked to her kitchen floor during Katrina to get disarmed, that .22 revolver pried out of her bony fingers, or if you found yourselves or your neighbors in Watertown when they went door to door at dawn, taking families out of their homes at gunpoint. That should never happen in America. And just following orders is not. There's no reason, no excuse for that.
Okay.
We're about halfway through the show, which means we're going to take a quick break. Don't forget to check out coalitionradio.us on Facebook, facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and of course on Twitter at Coalition_Radio. I am on the Coalition_Radio site right now. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet them out to us. We'll be right back after the break. Manchester 65 is New England's newest live music and events venue. If you're not completely enjoying your current live music experience, there is another option. Manchester 65 is large enough to support touring acts, yet small enough for that local feel. For upcoming events, go to manchester65.com. Make it your place. Manchester65.com.
Liberty-loving freedom fighters, join us for Liberty Love Fest 4, an evening of live music, arts, education, and trade. Potluck social with liberty-minded people from New England and beyond. April 5th at St. Joseph's Church Hall in Cumberland, Rhode Island. Details on the web at libertylovefest.org. That's libertylovefest.org.
ProvidenceNightOut.com is a one-stop destination website where you'll discover a comprehensive guide of everything that the Providence area has to offer. Nightlife, entertainment, dining and dancing, community and family events, and so much more. Download the free app called My Night Out. It's ProvidenceNightOut.com.
Hey everybody, it's Tony Jones. You know, when I'm not here yakking about politics, I spin records. That's right, if you like good old-fashioned rock and roll radio the way God intended it to be, then tune in to The Tony Jones Show. The information's online at tonyjones.org. That's tonyjones.org. You are tuned in to the Coalition. Tony Jones here. Don't forget to check out coalitionradio.us. I am on Twitter throughout the live broadcast. Coalition_radio. The Coalition continues, P.O. Chris, good evening.
Good evening, Tony.
We are very cozy this evening.
We're doing sort of our boy band thing here.
It's not unusual.
Right, I've got the ear properly covered, so I can be in harmony with Chris. If that's ever going to happen.
Right.
Hey, I was thinking with when we had Jarrett Moffitt from Regulate Rhode Island on earlier, for that segment we should have changed your name to the Pot Axe Pair. What do you think about that?
I like it.
Make you hip.
We are going to be talking about radio station WPOT soon. Okay. Well, we're happy tonight to have on. From the Oath Keeper movement, two of its local leaders. We've got John Franceschi and Randy O.K. Swanson. I want to continue the line of questioning here, if you will, the interrogation. John, how did you come to be involved? What was that moment that brought you into this movement?
I would say, well, first, thanks for having us on. I would say that for me, that turning point was, I guess I was a neocon before I even knew what that was, okay? And I came to find out back around 2006 that something was really fishy, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So I started digging a little. I started doing some homework. And I'm proud to say today that I do consider myself to be quite a bit libertarian in my views. For me, it really kind of started back in 2006. I did, after September 11th, 2001, I started to really pay a lot more attention to the news and whatnot. And I did become a member of the United States Air Force Auxiliary Civil Air Patrol. I was a member of the Rhode Island Wing out of Providence, and I did that for about 2.5 years as part of the Emergency Services team. I was a ground team member, and was for search and rescue. But then back, I would say, just before the election cycle of 2008 started to ramp up, there was a lot of talk about the different politicians that were running, and I began to get really concerned when I started to hear more and more about some of these folks. So I ended up finding my way to Lexington Green with Randy on April 19, 2009. Became an Oath Keeper back then. Been with the organization ever since, and I'm just here as a citizen doing what I can to support the Constitution in any way possible.
How far into Rhode Island law enforcement or military does the Oath Keeper movement currently stretch? Is it something that's still evolving, or is it fairly well into it?
Well, the National Oath Keepers organization, you can find that at oathkeepers.org. This is a national movement, and it's our mission to reach, teach, and inspire law enforcement and military to honor their oath. What we've been doing is talking to people on the street, to setting up appointments on a national level. They do reach out to sheriffs. We're definitely involved with Sheriff Richard Mack and his Constitutional Sheriffs program. He is a member of the national board, and that's one of our that's a major mission, is to reach, teach, and inspire those that took the oath to honor that oath. May I?
Yeah, of course.
Were you looking for a number of?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a sense that what's challenging to me is I would imagine a big challenge to your organization is you've got a very structured organization, like say the Rhode Island State Police, and you've got a clear chain of command that, for example, in the Rhode Island State Police seems to be pretty absolute. And how tough is it to get folks to discuss the notion of disobeying a direct order?
It can be tough. That's a big challenge for folks in that position, and it's understandable because, obviously their bread and butter is on the line, if nothing else. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they might fear that disobeying an order could get them in some kind of trouble with their employer, or even with other unfortunate charges that they think could be brought.
Legal trouble for
but
themselves.
The truth of the matter is that all we're asking them to do is to honor the oath that they swore to do, which is not illegal. It's not a problem by any stretch of imagination. The only person that would have a problem with that is somebody that's trying to tell you to do something against the Constitution. And so by asking somebody to honor their oath, or to tell them, to remind them that they did take this oath and that it is a sacred obligation, it's certainly in the public interest for us to do that.
No, I absolutely agree. And remember, I'm sympathetic to your cause. And in fact, when you read the oath that they swear, it's actually very clear, particularly in the officer's oath in joining the U.S. military, that not only is it okay, it's actually expected of them.
That's right. They have an obligation to honor that oath. In fact, they could even be tried for perjury, because to take an oath as part of a public proceeding and then to break that oath is actually considered to be perjury, mm-hmm. in the least. it could be treason on the high end.
Right.
Randy, you had a comment?
Yeah, this might be a good time to quickly go over the 10 orders.
Sure.
Say your listeners at home and across America can go to oathkeepers.org and find out for themselves what the mission is about and what these honorable people are doing, standing tall to defend the Constitution. And those in Rhode Island, feel free to join us on Facebook, Rhode Island Oath Keepers on Facebook. You can also get in touch with us through email at ri@oathkeepers.org. We have meetings twice a month. Every first Tuesday in the month in Smithfield, Rhode Island, and every third Tuesday in the month at Sonoma Grill in North Kingstown. You can find out more by emailing us. The 10 orders that you'll find posted on the national site is: number 1, we will not obey orders to disarm the American people. Number 2, we will not obey orders to conduct warrantless searches of the American people. Number 3, we will not obey orders to detain American citizens as unlawful enemy combatants or subject them to military tribunal. Number 4, we will not obey orders to impose martial law or a state of emergency on a state. Number 5, we will not obey orders to invade or subjugate any state that asserts its sovereignty. Number 6, we will not obey orders to blockade American cities, thus turning them into giant concentration camps. Number 7, we will not obey orders to force American citizens into any form of detention camp under any pretext. Number 8, we will not obey orders to assist or support the use of any foreign troops on U.S. soil against the American people to keep the peace or to maintain control. Number 9, we will not obey orders to confiscate the property of the American people, including food and other essential supplies. Number 10, we will not obey orders which infringe on the right of the people to free speech, to peaceably assemble, and to petition their government for the redress of grievances. The important part is not only this is for the law enforcement and military to pay attention to, the citizens need to be paying attention to these 10 orders and to stand up tall when they see these orders being infringed upon.
Now, for everyone in our listening audience who thinks that these are extreme situations, our last 2 sitting presidents, ironically, one Republican, one Democrat, have both been directly responsible for issuing orders that violate those 10 standards, aren't they? I mean, you had the specter of President Bush, the darling of the moderate neocons and the moderate whatevers, ordering the confiscation of weapons from law-abiding citizens, and then you had Watertown.
That's right.
So this is not. There's a guy on who's a kind of famous on Rhode Island Talk Radio, and he always talks about, he signs off on his calls. A guy named Charlie. He always says goodnight to all the slowly boiling lobsters. So what we've got a situation here is we've got lots of slowly boiling lobsters. This sort of stealth incremental change in the perception of what we're allowed to do and what rights are given to us by either God or our Creator, depending on your interpretation, seems to be going away. Let's flash forward to Watertown for a second. Did you ever get a sense that amongst the first responders in Watertown that there was any uneasiness? And probably we should take just kind of a look back. Now, you had just a handful of days after the now infamous, the tragic Boston bombing. By the way, perpetrated allegedly, we're an FCC station here, allegedly by 2 individuals who had been ignored by the Homeland Security people, who were on the terrorist watch list, and who had spent several years being supported in public transfer payments by the people of Massachusetts. Just for the sake of argument there, the lessons of 9/11 clearly not learned. So, flash forward a couple of days. Tragically, a young MIT policeman is executed, allegedly by one of these individuals. And what at the time, because I was in Watertown that night, what was reported to the citizenry as unrelated to the Boston bombings, and was merely just a sort of some type of burglary in process. At that point in time, thousands of law enforcement and paramilitary and military were mobilized to engage in what could be argued was a near historic gunfight right on the streets of an American city. Flash forward to the next morning. Citizens of Watertown, some of whom are my friends, and a few blocks from where I work, are summarily evicted from their homes, marched into the street, under the guise of safety. I've always wondered about that whole line of fire thing, march into the middle of the street at gunpoint by members of the American military. So this is not pretend anymore. This is not fiction. This is not Red Dawn Rising. This is not some bad 70s teen flick. This is real, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no tinfoil hat required here. For those that have taken the oath that are in law enforcement and the military, you don't only have the right to refuse all unlawful, unconstitutional orders, you are obligated to refuse all unlawful, unconstitutional orders.
So, anecdotally, have you guys ever had any feedback from people involved in Watertown?
We did get a chance to speak to a couple of officers that had some friends that were involved in law enforcement, that had some friends that were engaged in that event, that incident. They tried to tell us that it was basically, look, it was only like 4 houses, and they had what they felt was probable cause, and so they were trying to kind of wallpaper over it and say it really wasn't that big of a deal. I have a problem with that. I don't know if these guys, just trying to follow the thin blue line, but the problem is that we have a Constitution, and when we fail to adhere to it, all hell will break loose. Then you have a country that's governed by men rather than by law. And I saw the videos of these people being marched out at machine gun point in the early morning hours and being screamed at as if they were, some kind of a terrorist, right, and forced down the street into whatever kind of detention area that they were being held in. I mean, this is not something that you see or that you think you're going to see in the United States, yet it happened. And like you said, Pat, it happened under the guise of security. All liberties are always taken under the guise of security, and that's something we have to guard against.
And don't we have a mechanism in situations where we supposedly have 4 houses that we have a reason to be concerned about for emergency warrants?
Definitely, they could go through that process.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the process has been set up for emergency situations so that they aren't sitting around waiting for days while a case gets stale or a lead gets stale.
Right, and Lord knows they had enough manpower out there on the streets. They could have, sealed off the general area if they were afraid somebody was going to escape. They didn't have to march themselves into people's private homes.
There are judges on call whose job it is to respond to emergency warrant requests.
That's true.
Yep.
To me, the most difficult part of the situation seems to be that let me draw an analogy between these situations and declarations of war. No one ever declares war anymore. No one ever gets up and announces we're going to confiscate guns. No one ever announces that we're going to suspend civil liberties. No one would ever dare in this country get up and announce that they were going to invoke posse comitatus. I mean, no one in a million years actually gets out and says what they're going to do anymore. They cloak it in wordplay and they obscure it and they obfuscate it. Everything is just there's no genuine speech anymore.
That's exactly right. Everywhere else in history that your liberties were lost, they all had the same problem. It was apathy. Everywhere it happened, they said it can't happen here. And those that did survive those tragedies, the word was, boy, if we would have only known what we would have done differently.
And yet we do know.
That's right. This is the first time in history that this community here in America has access to history and prior mistakes. There's no reason for us to make those same mistakes over and over again. The answer here is finding out how courage is contagious.
In terms of outreach to current law enforcement, I'm trying to think of a situation that could happen here in Rhode Island. You've got a tremendous amount of friction. You've got a tremendous amount of corruption. I don't think we're going to see at any time soon riots on the street like you see in Kiev. But at the same point, we're only really one natural disaster away from this type of incident again, aren't we?
Well, we got some really good news for you. Oath Keepers' mission is primary mission has always been to reach, teach, and inspire those that took the oath to simply have the honor and integrity to keep that oath. The good news is the National Oath Keepers organization has launched a new outreach program, the CPT teams. This is a community preparedness teams, where we reach out to local churches, the American Legion, VFW posts, sheriff posses, CERT teams, and help the communities prepare, even community watch groups, to help prepare for events such as crippling snowstorms, volcanoes, other potential tragedies, where we can use, there's a tremendous amount of talent and experience throughout Oath Keepers. There's a lot of background, and what we are doing on a nationwide level is to reach out to these different groups and help them prepare for any situations that might arise in their own communities.
Do you think at some time in the near future we'll have the prospect of an American citizen staring down a tank a la Tiananmen Square?
Well, that's where the courage part comes in. This is you guys with this radio show, times how many thousands across the nation, people that are doing their own journalistic work, the hundreds of thousands of people that are holding YouTube channels and getting the truth out that way. That's what's going to help solve these potential problems. We can nip it right in the bud. Only the guilty fear the truth, and the more people that stand up and do their own journalistic work and have the courage to get off their couch, turn off Honey Boo Boo in the football game, and actually do something, you'll realize that you've got a lot of friends out there. You'll be meeting really good people, and you're not going to have those words uttered out of your mouth. I should have this, I should have that. You won't have to look at your son or your daughter in the face and say, I should have.
And Pat, if I might jump in there, I'd just like to say that is it possible that we could have some kind of a showdown like that? Well, there are a lot of things that are possible. The thing is, I would like to say to all the law enforcement and military folks out there that if you're feeling like we do, like you know there's something wrong and that you don't want to find yourself on the wrong side of history, be encouraged, because there are actually, we're in the position where we get to talk to a lot of law enforcement and military in our outreach programs, and we know that there are a significant number of military and law enforcement that are in our camp, and that when the rubber meets the road, they will indeed honor their oath. The reality is that there are also those who are on the other side. And so, is it possible that we could have some kind of a showdown at some point? Well, we didn't think it was possible in America to have what happened in Watertown happen, and that happened. The German people didn't think it was possible that 11 million of their own citizens, including about 4 million Germans, would be exterminated by the government that they elected. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of things that are possible. What we're trying to do is help those who have taken the oath have the courage, the honor, the integrity to hold fast to that oath for the good of the people, for their families, and the future of this country, so that we don't have those kind of situations happen. We're trying to help cut the fuse, if you will, and defuse that whole situation.
How do Second Amendment rights play into this?
Without the Second Amendment, we don't have anything left. You saw what happened in Connecticut. Our brothers and sisters south of us getting these draconian, unconstitutional bills passed that actually turned 300,000 of their citizens into felons overnight at the stroke of a pen. The same thing happened in New York. The good news is the numbers are in our favor. If you saw the people lining up to register their firearms in Connecticut, which never happened on American soil, it was a sad day. If you didn't put a lump in your throat and have the fur at the back of your neck stand up, you weren't paying attention. But since then, the numbers are coming out, and They're talking 300,000 Connecticut citizens chose to do the right thing, chose to stand tall for America's freedoms and for the Second Amendment, and refused to follow those draconian gun-grabbing bills. So that's the good news.
It's an interesting, in an op-ed piece, the Hartford Courant weighed in. And what I always find fascinating is the interplay of the media with the rest of the real world. And the media obviously is fiercely protective of its First Amendment rights. This week, the FCC announced a program where they would place people who are going to be, quote-unquote, observers to study the ramifications of a privately owned media and to understand the degree of diversity that takes place in news reporting. Simply to report and observe. Never to change or affect. Of course not. The media went bat bleep crazy. The media, of course, had its collective nervous breakdown, which, by the way, I support, of course, the media being fiercely protective of their own individual rights.
As they should.
But where does the Second and the Fourth and the 10th Amendment come into play? Why is there this sort of myopic tunnel vision about their own individual? Don't they understand, guys, that in the collapse of these other freedoms, theirs will probably be the last to go, but they will go?
Well, they don't think that it's going to pertain to them because they feel as though they live on a different plane. They're a special class of people. So they already feel as though they're protected by whatever mechanisms they feel as though they have in place through the, whether it be the good old boy network or, friends in high places, So they don't imagine or envision a time when they themselves are going to be, staring at a proposition of losing these rights. The problem that we have is that we have a public that generally doesn't understand the difference between rights and privileges.
Right.
And
correct.
so if people could take a step back and look at the difference between rights and privileges, if they could just simply understand that a right is something that is inherent in you, that nobody can take away. The only person that can take it away is that you can give it away by your actions against harming other people's rights. A privilege is a special license that is granted to you by a higher authority. And that higher authority has the final say. They can take that privilege away at any time for any reason, and it does not have to be a good reason. And that's not the kind of society our founders envisioned. That's not the kind of society that our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence helped to form. And that's certainly not the kind of society I want to live in.
Tony, one of the first conversations you and I ever had on the radio was on the Tony Jones Show. And we talked about, you asked me the question, what outraged me? And I guess, as we sort of wrap up today's show, what outrages me is the complete inability of American citizens to understand exactly what Mr. Francesca just delineated. The notion of what are your liberties, what are your rights. And it seems like as a nation we're being purposely dumbed down. They're becoming clouded, they're becoming distant, they're becoming obscured. Tony, you posted a piece this weekend about where America stands in terms of freedoms, particularly with regards to liberties and free speech. Where did we stand in the world?
In the low 40s, I want to say.
I think it was 46.
Something along those lines.
Time to start paying
It's
attention.
unimaginable.
Right.
And which is part of the reason why I could be on my couch right now next to my lovely girlfriend, possibly partaking in what we talked about earlier today, or possibly enjoying an ice cold Narragansett beer.
Or discussing marriage.
But instead I spend my time, and that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about alternative media, because this is one of the few times in history where technology and current events have intersected, where there could be a true change through citizen journalism, alternative media, and things of that nature, social networking. But to your earlier point, Pio, could you imagine the poor person whose job it is to hang around and observe me all weekend?
Well, guys, you had one more point you wanted to make.
Yeah, we got some good news. We will be at the Liberty Love Fest on April 5th. For those out there listening that want to stop by and say hello, we will be doing outreach at that event like we do at the Quonset Point Air Show, and you see us at the parades across the state, from the Bristol Independence Day Parade to down in Westerly for the Columbus Day Parade. And for those that are interested that want to join us in one of our monthly meetings, the first one of the month is on the first Tuesday. That's at the VFW Post 2947 Farnham Pike in Smithfield, Rhode Island. The third Tuesday of the month, it's also at 7 p.m. You can join us at the Sonoma Grill, and that's in North Kingstown at 7366 Post Road.
Well, guys, thanks again for coming in. You're welcome here anytime. Please send us some information that we can contribute to our blog at coalition.radio.us. Listen, I want to close with Manchester 65's events this week. On Thursday, the 27th, we've got Hip Hop Breakdown, something I may actually join you in, Tony, on the 28th. No, we're not going to break dance. The spa and reggae sounds of the Pilfers. On the 1st, we've got October Accord and Friends, and then on the 2nd, we've got Cassidy at Manchester 65, our new sponsor.
CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on Twitter, Coalition_Radio. Till next time, for PO Taxpayer and Chris, my name is Tony Jones. Join us next time.